In the year 2001, a murder took place in California, which attracted the attention of the world. The victim was a girl named Ashley Earlin, and she was on a date with the famous actor Ashton Kutcher. But that night she was killed by a thug named Michael Gargiulo, and he was called the Hollywood Thug. And this is his story. Born Michael Gargiulo in 1976, he grew up in Glenview, Illinois, a quiet, green suburb in northwestern Ohio. He mentioned to one of his psychiatrists that in his childhood there was someone he loved, that he was physically abused by his father, and that he suffered from severe bouts of depression in his childhood. In the neighborhood, he was known as a bully and quick-tempered person, and the children were afraid to approach him or talk to him, and his former friend described him as turning from an ordinary person into a madman in a matter of seconds. Despite his intimidating personality, he still had some friends, including a girl named Trisha Picasio. And she lived close to his house, and she was his neighbor since he was a child, and she is the only one who trusts him from her friends, who see Gargiulo as a strange person. But when he reached adolescence, the problem of anger and madness returned to him, and during this period of his life he reduced his presence with Trisha for no reason. Finally, years later, Michael and Trisha graduated from high school in 1993, and were scheduled to attend Purdue University in Indiana that fall.
But on the night of August 13, 1993, Trisha and her friends went to dinner.
That night, she returned home around 1 a.m., and the next morning, her father woke up and went down to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. But when he came down, he found his daughter murdered on the front stairs of the house, surrounded by blood. Her father sat in a state of shock. Then he informed the police. When the policemen arrived at the place, they took her body to the forensic doctor, and the doctor stated that she had been stabbed 12 times. Despite finding DNA under Trisha's fingernails, limited forensic technology at the time in 1993, they were unable to identify a suspect from the samples, and the case was transferred to the Cold Case Squad. In the late 90s, Gargiulo moved to Los Angeles, and there he learned martial arts, self-defense, and boxing. And he got a job as a guard in West Hollywood, and in the meantime he made friends with two of his fellow guards, and one day in the year 2000 while he was out with his friends to party in Los Angeles, he confessed to them while he was in a state of severe intoxication that he committed a crime 7 years ago, and mentioned the name of Trisha Picasio. He also said to them, "You know what? I finally killed that bitch." His friends were astonished by his words, but at the same time they did not believe him because he was known to lie and exaggerate when he was drunk. A few days later, Gargiulo was fired from his job as a guard after punching one of his colleagues at work, after which he got a part-time job cleaning air conditioners in Los Angeles. Crime_911. It was around this time that Gargiulo befriended Ashley Earlin, a fashion designer, with whom he lived just 2 blocks away. Ashley was dating big actors like Diesel and Ashton Kutcher, and despite this she was dating Michael Gargiulo because he was her neighbor and visited her from time to time.
On the night of February 21st, 2001, Ashley was on a date to meet actor Ashton. That night, actor Ashton Kutcher went to her house and knocked on her door at around 10 p.m.
She did not answer him, so he began to worry that something might have happened to her. So he decided to look inside the house and glimpsed red blood spots on the ground. He thought it was just wine, so he left. The next day, the worker entered the house and found Ashley dead and drowned in a sea of blood, and when the criminal investigation men arrived, they determined that she had been stabbed 48 times. Detectives questioned Ashton Kutcher, and he had a strong alibi, but after speaking with her friends they mentioned that she had recently had an affair with her neighbor, Michael Gargiulo, and had been visiting her at odd times in the middle of the night. So they went to his house and took a DNA sample, left his house, and when they compared him to Ashley's body, they found a positive match. Meanwhile, detectives from the Cook County Cold Case Division were re-examining evidence in the 1993 murder of Tricia Picasio. And when the investigators went to Cook County to compare the DNA they took from Ashley's body with Tricia's body, they found a positive match. She was for Gargiulo. Even more surprising to investigators is that Gargiulo was living near Tricia's house when she was murdered, as was Ashley Ellerin. When they returned to his house to interrogate him again, they did not find him, and he disappeared for no reason and left the state. By late 2005, Gargiulo was living with another woman, whom he had recently married, with whom he had moved to the eastern suburbs of Los Angeles. Across the courtyard of their apartment complex lived a woman named Maria Bruno, a 32-year-old mother of 4.
In the early hours of the morning of December 5th, 2005, Gargiulo planned to break into her house.
That evening, he sneaked into her house through the open kitchen window, then stabbed her to death. When she was found the next morning, her throat had been cut, her breasts had been removed, and they found several stab wounds on her body. The only evidence found at the crime scene was a blue shoe containing a drop of blood, which was discovered outside her apartment. After killing her, Gargiulo fled, moving with his wife into an apartment complex in Santa Monica, California. Across the alley from their second-floor apartment lived a 27-year-old woman named Michelle Murphy.
On the night of February 28, 2008, Murphy woke up and found Gargiulo on top of her, wearing a baseball cap and holding a knife, then attacked her and stabbed her in the chest 4 times.
Although her length does not exceed 5 feet, she managed to resist him, and a bloody quarrel occurred between them, and during the quarrel Gargiulo injured himself, left the place, and Murphy miraculously escaped death, and she informed the police. When investigators arrived at the scene, they took blood samples from the scene, examined them, and took them to the Santa Monica County Sheriff's Department. And through the national database, DNA samples from the blood they took from the crime scene matched Michael Gargiulo. As a result, he was arrested on charges of attempted murder. During his detention, they compared the DNA they found in Murphy's house with Maria Bruno's body and found a match. They also found inside his car a blue shoe like the one found in Maria Bruno's house. Based on this evidence, Michael Gargiulo was charged in September 2008 with the murder of Maria Bruno and the attempted murder of Michelle Murphy. 3 years later, in 2011, investigators found enough evidence to charge Gargiulo with the murder of Tricia Picasio and fashion designer Ashley Ellerin, the most important of which was their DNA found on their bodies. In May 2019, the trial of Gargiulo began. Prosecutors described him as an aphrodisiac serial killer who sadistically murdered beautiful young women. Among the hundreds of witnesses called was Ashton Kutcher, who recounted the day he visited Ashley Ellerin's home in 2001. Gargiulo's defense team argued his innocence of the murders and claimed that he did not remember attacking any of his victims due to mental illness, but in 2019 he was found guilty of all charges against him, and the jury unanimously recommended that he be executed, and in June 2021 he was sentenced to death.